Get rolling. Welcome everybody to Blackfire's Unscripted series. This is the first in a series of events we plan to do that, as the name would suggest, is unscripted. This is a casual, informal conversation where we hope you can learn some tips and tricks from professionals across the industry. So who better to give us tips and tricks about your ability to effectively communicate using Zoom than Zoom? We have Jen Hill from Zoom joining us, also joined by Michael Curry and Victoria Starks, industry representatives. Michael Curry is an executive with Nutanix and spends a lot of time behind Zoom and a lot of time on property with people like us as well. Victoria works with Aruba and has spent a good deal of amount of time with our teams, both on Zoom and in person as well. Ellie Reed joins us as a VP from the Shared Services Organization. She is always on Zoom and always on point. So I want to make sure that, like it says, this is unscripted, very informal. We're going to have a fun conversation. I would encourage the audience to please ask questions through Q&A. It's open. We have no agenda for this, so we're just going to start talking about some of the fun things we like to do on Zoom. Please join us by posting questions in the Q&A function, and I'll be back a little bit more toward the end. I'll leave it to the experts now. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. I thought, we could actually just kick it off and talk about, what the best setup. All of us are in, different spaces and different places, home and work and office and, or kitchen or basement or sharing your bedroom. So I thought we could kick off and just talk about some best practices for physically setting up your space here for your Zoom meetings. And I know, Victoria, you've got some really great, interesting hacks. So do you want to kick us off?
You bet. So obviously, we've all been on back-to-back Zoom calls, and one of the things that I was finding out is that I was getting aches in places that I didn't have before, because obviously before all this happened, you got the chance to get up and walk around the office, and wherever you were, you had some time to not be sitting. And what I noticed is I was starting to see some pain in my lower back. And so I started studying it a little bit, and I found that I was kind of rolling forward and looking into the video screen to get a better look at folks. And what I did is I actually got a lower lumbar pillow, right? And that kind of forced me to sit back with shoulders back. And I think it just speaks to your environment as a whole to make sure that everything is ergonomically set up the best you can, right? When you're probably off-site or working remotely. So that's one thing that kind of got me thinking about that environment. The other thing is to make sure that you've got enough light in the room that you're in. So those are just a couple things that we've learned through this process.
Yeah, lighting is super key. Go ahead, Ellie.
No, I was going to say that's very similar to my journey. I know when this hit, as Baka said, I worked at Caesars, and all of a sudden we weren't in the office, we were remote. I had my laptop on a table and I didn't have a webcam. So I was using my phone as the camera for Zoom. And I had a dining room chair that wasn't very comfortable. And then over the months, as we're still home and still remote, I moved and got a chair. I now have a sit-stand desk. The lighting, Jen and Victoria, as you were saying, is so important. I used to be in a room where my lights would flicker, and I noticed that it was just really, really hard to, at the end of the day, my eyes were tired. I'm staring at the screen all day long. And so for me, the best setup was somewhere where I could both stand and sit, walk around and pace around, but also just really realizing that meeting in a face-to-face environment gave my eyes a rest. It made me move from place to place. And so trying to find some of those areas and how to build it up. Right now I'm up in a loft, and that has been a journey, because I think as we all look at our work from home setups, what can you hear behind you? Right now, everyone in the house can hear me when I'm talking. I got a kind note from my spouse a few days ago that said, hey, Ellie, you're really going to have to start using your AirPods because I can't hear your meetings anymore. I just really can't handle it. And I said, okay. So I think that there's a lot of these considerations that, at least for myself, it's been a journey since we all began working remotely, and it's been refined. Every little like best practice that I get, I change something a little bit different. I switch up my lighting, I switch up my camera, I switch up my angle, and it's been a lot of learning. What about you, Mike?
Well, I say treat your home like a sound stage and a movie stage. I mean, honestly, you have to really sit back and if you even have to go on your own private Zoom call with your cell phone just to take a look at your lighting and everything else. I'm going to go off my visual background here. This is my office, but the best investment you can possibly make is that right there. That little cheap Amazon, I'm not plugging for Amazon here, but that little cheap Amazon selfie light does wonders. It's got a couple settings on it, and believe me, between the filters and the selfie light, this is what you want to see. You don't want to see all the lights on, with me. Echo is very important. If you have echo in your office, put some carpets down, put some stuff on the walls. It absorbs all that echo. But the only way you're going to see this is see it for yourself. So get on your own personal call, put your camera on, bring up your cell phone and start watching yourself. Look behind you in the office. I have a TV up here that across the room. I even turned that off now because I noticed on one of the calls, someone sent me a text that says, I see you're watching this. And they can see it from a reflection of a piece of glass. So that's the other thing, people are getting a first look at your home. And like we all are, we're somewhat nosy, right? And so, people will study what you have and they'll look and they look for the smallest little things out there. But, in all, have fun. I mean, right there, this is having fun. This is a new beta version that Zoom brought out. And we have a team call every Wednesday. We probably spent 30 minutes this morning putting mustaches on and hats and pirates hats and everything else this morning. But have fun with Zoom because it will take some of the boredom away, take some of the fear away, as you move through it.
That's very true. Thanks, Mike. And I my personal setup here, just like Victoria and everyone is thinking, we've got our aches and pains of sitting here and being, working from home all day and now not being very mobile. I've got a sit-stand desk. It's got this little, button that you can just raise it and go back down. And when I raise it, I've got this mini treadmill. That's an under desk treadmill so that I'm not also standing because I found standing started to hurt, after a few hours. So now I've got this little treadmill where I can turn it on if I want to. It's really silent. I can just sit here and just walk really easily while I'm in my meetings and have a little bit of movement. So that's super helpful for your setup. And so that actually also brings me into the video settings. What can you set up? We talked about physically what you can do in your space to make you comfortable, to dampen some noise, and to look at your lighting and what you're doing. But what can you do actually in Zoom that will help with that? So what I'm going to do is share my screen and you guys can see exactly what I'm looking at. Can you see our screen here? Great. So in your meetings, this is a webinar, so it's slightly different across the bottom, but in your meetings, you have the same settings here on the bottom by your mute button and your stop video. So hit that up arrow in your stop video and you can see video settings. That'll pop up this little settings window. There's a few things that you can do here, say if you're just in your basement or in a place that doesn't have a window and you can't have good lighting, and maybe you haven't gotten your big ring light yet, you can adjust for low light manually. There's an auto setting that it's on. You can manually adjust it and just add a ton of light if you really want to or need. But you can add just the right amount to help you look and feel like your best on your videos. You can also do this really neat little feature called Touch Up My Appearance, which basically what that does is because we have HD video, light, and you may be a little bit closer sitting into your, by your camera, maybe you don't want to show everything, every little detail on your face or your hair or your clothing. And this Touch Up My Appearance kind of just blurs that out just a little bit. So everything is softer. So it kind of just makes you feel like you're more video ready. Some of the filters that Michael was just talking about is actually under here, background and filters. So everyone knows virtual backgrounds. You're really familiar with that. I've got one on. Most people have them. These fun filters are a great way to change up your meeting. But what Michael was talking about was this beta, Studio Effects beta in the lower corner. That then adds some nice eyebrows in different colors, if you like, and whatever suits you. You can fade that out, make different opacities here. You can also add some facial hair if you'd like, and lip color if you also really want. So the really cool thing about this is you can apply to all future meetings. So once you get these settings that you really, really like, you can just hit apply to all future meetings. And then as soon as you pop into your next Zoom meeting, boom, you've got your face on. Whatever that face, you'd like it to be, can be on. So that's just another like way for these, settings in Zoom that can help you that kind of mimic the physical settings. And Michael also talked about sound. Really great point, because there's echo, there's dogs, there's someone mowing the lawn, there's like people dropping off Amazon packages. I don't know about you guys, but I order a lot of Amazon packages now. So there's a lot of knocking on the door. So under your audio settings here in the same area, there is this automatic set microphone volume that you can check on, or you can leave off so that the volume stays the same. And then there's this suppress background noise, which is typically set to auto. But you can see here, like auto Zoom's AI will just take the background noise and try to just mellow it out a little bit on its own. But you can add faint background sound if you want to play some music for a happy hour. You can do some medium sounds that will be blocked out, like a persistent fan or something. And then here high, like if you are typing or maybe multitasking on a meeting, which I know a lot of us do, you can eliminate that typing sound by hitting high background noise suppression. Dogs barking, lawnmowers going, that will be filtered out. So it helps you feel a lot more confident. Like Ellie, like in your situation in the loft, having all that noise coming up because it's a big open space, like that would really help in your background. So
it's a real challenge. And right now it's so funny because I've got actually some construction going on at my house. So I'm playing fast and loose with the mute button, but it's one of those things where we've got all these settings that make it really great, where even if you're not in an ideal situation, whether that's your permanent work from home office, or even when you're traveling or on the road, being able to still have that professional view of you as someone who is attending a meeting and interacting with people is so critically important. And being able to do that and have that flexibility is really great.
It really is. So are there any other like setup hacks like within Zoom, Michael, Ellie, or Victoria, that you guys have found that you like?
You're on mute is probably the phrase of 2020, but there you go.
Yeah. Well, that brings up just this one. Have fun with virtual backgrounds. Here's my favorite right here. So we'll get on there and typically, especially on internal calls, we'll play a little conference call bingo out there and keep scores. When it's someone's birthday, we always start the call off with that. So although we don't have that personal, interaction, we're bringing a lot of the personality with the different ones. So I probably have 20 or 30 of pictures. They're super easy to import. Not the copyright people do not need to know this, but snippet is your favorite friend. You find something online, you grab your snippet, you snip it, throw it in there, and then you have it to use out there.
Well, and I think that the virtual backgrounds can be fun or themed or whatever it may be, but then they can also be that sort of professional branding for you or the company that you're representing, which I think is really, really critical, because you're able to, and it looks a little bit weird. I was on a call the other day with a whole sales team where half of them were in the same sort of virtual office background, which was actually a little bit disconcerting because they were all in the same office but not together. So there's a few things that work and then other things that don't necessarily work, but it's fun to be able to have the options to play with, as well as some of the other features, I think, to drive other types of engagement beyond just the visual, which I think is really interesting. I don't believe we have the chat feature on today for our attendees. I know the panelists are using it, but what are some of those other features that we might be able to use to keep our audience engaged besides engaging visuals?
Yeah, so we've got reactions, which are in meetings today, where in the bottom tray In the far right, you would see reactions, and we don't have them in webinars today. They're coming to webinars. But in meetings, you'll be able to react with like a thumbs up, a heart, like a surprise face, a celebration, and confetti. So, you can, instead of polling, right, and like this, like kind of droll poll pops up and everyone types in the thing and the results come up, you can just ask everybody to say, hey, thumbs up if you like this, or like surprise face if you don't like this, or something like that. And that way it's engaging. People also can see everyone else's reactions. So that's another way to really get the audience to be interested. They're along the theme of like some games like that Michael brought up. This is really fun one that we have done here at Zoom, where you get one picture and you can cut that picture into several pieces and send it to your different, teammates. And then you can rearrange and have them put them at their back, and then rearrange it as a puzzle. So let me kind of just show you how you can do that. I'm not going to show the actual pictures because we haven't given backgrounds to everybody, but if I share my screen here, you can see this is called gallery view. How you change that here is in the top right corner. Typically you see speaker view like this, where you have the main speaker would change to be the main big video. But if you go to gallery view, you can see everyone in a small space. And then we've got this feature where you can just literally click and just drag. And so with everyone having different backgrounds and like of this, like different pieces of the same background, you can just move them around, and that can be a really fun engagement, both for like your customers to do something really interesting, to find out a cool fact that you're about to present or something like that, right? You can take that fact, put in a PowerPoint, take a screenshot, chop it up, and give it to your other presenters, and you can have a really nice engaging way to do that. Another interesting way is, and I'm actually is sharing your slides as a virtual background. So this is under the share option. And then across the top when that share window pops up, there is advanced, and you go to advanced and you hit share slides as a virtual background. And then you can pick your slide deck, which does have to be on your computer. It can't be from like Google Docs or something like that. But it just takes a minute here to load because I've got quite a few in this one.
Question while you're loading that, Jen, are these features available, and this has come up in the Q&A a little bit, are these features available for everyone, or does it kind of depend on which version of Zoom you're using? Because I know, at least for me, I don't know if it's my computer or just the version that Caesars is on, but not all of those features are available. Or is that just because we're in a webinar right now and not a meeting?
Yes, right now if you're testing it for the webinar, but for meetings, if you just make sure to be on 5.5 or more, then you for sure will have all of these features. They're available on all account types, so it shouldn't matter. The only thing that might be is you have like your account admin, that blocks that particular feature, because you can block like sharing slides with virtual background, or you can stop people from, doing different things because as a security feature. So if they're all enabled, then you should be able to, if you have a question, you should probably ask your account admin. But this is like an awesome way to really like engage your audience and people that you're talking to, because instead of looking at my little video in the corner and then the content here on the main screen, I've got both here. And as you can see, I can click on my own video and resize it to as big as I really want to be, and I can do this whole a presentation weatherman style. And if you think about building your presentation on purpose of where you're going to be, I can now start to like point to different content in different places like this. And there is this, slider bar that I can advance the table of contents, and I can say like, hey, we're going to be covering this and this and that. And, it's really interesting and interactive, and a way that you can, get the engagement of your audience in a different way. I'll stop sharing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
A few other questions in the Q&A that I think are on that topic were questions around people who are having trouble getting their virtual backgrounds to quote unquote stick. And I know I had that problem with an old computer that I had where it just wasn't powerful enough to actually process, it seemed like, the virtual backgrounds to the specifications that it needed to be. Upgraded my computer and all of a sudden I can use them, which is really fun. But I do know there are some limitations like that. Are there any other things that people should watch out for in terms of best practices and making sure their virtual backgrounds work, like resolution or size or speed processing?
Yeah, thank you. So it is processing power, like virtual backgrounds does take. And so that's the number one thing. Two other things is lighting. because what it does is Zoom's AI will like scan within a certain range and then tell the difference between what's in range and then the background to edit out or green screen the rest of the background. So if you don't have enough contrast, like I have this problem because I have black hair and I've got some dark wall paint on a different wall. And so sometimes if I'm against that wall, my hair disappears and I just look like a bald person, like floating like face in this meeting. And same thing with your clothing. So the contrast between yourself and the background really helps the AI pull you out against that background. And also your clothing, which is why I tend to wear really bright clothing in just one palette without a lot of patterns, so it can distinguish between me and the So good question. Let's see. There's some virtual backgrounds work. Anything else? Improve virtual background? Yeah, I've seen a lot of these questions, huh?
Victoria, you're in meetings all day long and with a bunch of different types of people. What are some of the best and the worst that you've seen, or what tips would you have for folks or things to avoid in terms of how people are really setting up their overall backgrounds and how they're driving?
Sure, thanks. So first of all, even, before I get my Zoom day started, I really do take the time to get myself mentally ready for work. And yeah, you can have fun, you can do all of that. I think it's all important, but I really do everything that I would have done before heading out to meet with our customers, right? My makeup's done. I mean, guys probably don't wear makeup, but I'm showered, I'm ready to go. I've got my game face on. So I think that's, just so you're focused and you can, let your customer or your internal or external customer know that, you're here and you really want to listen to them. Speaking of listening, it is an adjustment when you're on Zoom calls, when you're in person with, your teammates or a customer. You can get a lot of body cues when they lean in, just the typical things. They're wrapping up a sentence. You can get a lot more being in person. So for Zoom, you just have to make sure. I've seen, if you talk about worst calls, I've seen a bunch of folks talking over each other, and not purposely, of course, but they're excited and they're just not sure that the other person's done or not. So just take a deep breath and really, I think, try to figure out and allow that other person to stop talking before you jump in there. It's what you've got to say. So. And I brand. I like to put Aruba background. This is you can't see it, it's kind of blown up, but this is the Aruba colors. I know Michael likes to have a lot of fun and put all these different screens on. I find when I'm jumping from meeting to meeting, I can barely have time to stand up and stretch between the two. So I usually put something that I know is professional up and just roll with it. So I'm kind of on the other spectrum of Zoom.
It's definitely personality, right?
Yeah, definitely.
A couple things, and Jen Hill, so happy about the sound suppression, but the statement about treating your home like a soundstage, certain things, system sounds. If you have an external speaker on your PC, get in the habit of turning it down. That always works. There's typically a sign, not right now, because I'm kind of hoping Amazon would show up to show you how annoying that is when they come up, but there's a sign that I'll put out there that says, "Do not ring doorbell!" Exclamation point. Making sure your yard guys are on your calendar. I definitely don't want to be having a conference call with my executives when the lawn guy's outside my window blowing, leaves around at 300 miles an hour. But those are all the things I've learned since the last 7 months, because we're doing this every day. But like anything else, it's habit. Now, most importantly, and we've all seen the YouTube videos, be aware. Be aware when your camera's on, be aware when it's off. Get in a habit to reach over and turn that camera off when you leave your office. There's a certain amount of security, that you want out there. And again, it's just all habit, to do that. And believe me, some of those tips that come from mistakes. So it's always good to learn from them.
For
Well,
sure.
and from an audio perspective too, I had as I said, I was requested strongly to move into the AirPods, which was a very exciting move from an audio perspective, because now those are also providing a lot more noise suppression than I originally had, and it's actually been a marked improvement in all of the meetings that I've had, where people are like, "Oh my God, thank goodness, Ellie, now we can actually hear you, and it's better than it was before." So I think the iterative nature of it, and then really trying different things, and also exploring all the new settings that are constantly coming up. We've got a couple of questions in there around, there are a bunch of different advanced settings, whether you have to go into the settings within the meeting itself, or it also feels like there are some specific settings around how you're creating meetings to begin with that you can get to through the web. Is that sort of the delineation there, Jen, that there are the sort of how I set up a meeting, that I need to log into the Zoom web settings, but then when I'm in the meeting, I can really control my meeting settings?
Yeah, there are many different settings for both. The web settings that you can set up, like when you're scheduling, have a lot to do with like how people enter. If you want to start a waiting room, if you want that waiting room to be customized, right, to have your logo, and things like that. If you want the link to be customized, if you want to send a branded email. So there's a lot of those type of things that are in the web settings, like before a meeting. You can also set up a lot of security, right? Like people have to authenticate or log in twice before they come into your meeting, things like that. But as far as the meeting experience, there are a few things like disabling chat or not letting people rename themselves. Because right now I can just click on myself and I can rename to Queen of the Universe if I really wanted to, right? And I could like come in and just have a completely different name, and no one would know who I really am. It's like no one knew my face before. So there are settings like that that definitely can affect the meeting, or it could be really fun to like do that ahead of time, like come in as like Queen of the Universe and like play a game or something like that. There are those security settings. I think I'm seeing Jake had asked a few questions about engagement in a meeting, like moving people like in a meeting space. He had asked a question before, I think around breakout rooms. So engaging in general, not just in Zoom, I think the biggest thing that you can do is actually in how you present, right? Is most of the time people are looking down at something like this, or their camera's like off to the side, they have a different monitor and they're talking like this, but look directly into your camera and not at the content, and really change your voice and pause for a lot of emphasis, and use hand gestures, and make sure your webcam so is that you can see from your chest, like about mid chest up, you can see your hands, and then make sure to not only do gestures across, maybe gestures towards the camera a little bit, so you have that depth. So that's always engaging no matter what platform you use, and being a dynamic speaker. A hack though, to do that, because I've done a lot of speaking engagements, is say, you've kind of got a script, or you've got something that you need to read or have notes on. How do you do that when there's a camera up here and your script's down there? You don't want to look like this all the time, right? So my hack is to get a second device, your cell phone or a laptop, something that's smaller than the screen that you're meeting and the camera's on. Put that device like just below the camera and have it there for you to be able to scroll, or there are auto scroll programs for you to use, and you can set the pace of that. And so that way you can read directly beneath, like I'm doing that right now, reading right what I'm doing on our notes for this meeting, but you can't really tell because it's just the camera. So that's another great presenting hack.
Yeah, I found that my gestures have gotten much higher than they used to be since through the pandemic and through the remote time that we've had. So I used to be very expressive anyway, and now I've just noticed that I'm much more likely to hit things that are around at head level, because when you're telling a story and talking about best practices, I think making sure that your eye contact is pretty much spot on, and you're not obviously reading your email or whatever it is that you're speaking is highly critical, but also just being aware that if you're gesturing down here and you can't really see anything, it gets a little bit weird. So bring it up, make it interesting. We're all staring at these meetings for hours and hours and hours a day. And so I really do think that anything we can do to make these meetings more effective, more enjoyable, and more engaging is really, really key. And sometimes that means, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before, sometimes it means not having a meeting or not having a video call and giving yourself a bit of a break. Or Victoria, you had a really good idea, some good recommendations when we were talking earlier about, you know, ending your meetings early and things like that. What are some of those other tips to kind of adjust how you plan your day?
Yeah, so I think a couple things, just like any other meeting, make sure you have a tight agenda and that you are working through it. And there's nothing better than, I think, if you've accomplished everything, to say, hey, I can give you a few minutes back in your day right now. And everybody can, you know, everybody can just jump on the phone and back on into whatever they're trying to work at. And the other thing I would say is, you know, be kind to yourself. You're stuck in this crazy situation. And, you know, if you don't think you look perfect on video or whatever, you don't even need to look at yourself. Focus on the person who is talking and cut yourself some slack, because this is, you know, these are kind of interesting times. So that's really it. Just be kind to one another and keep it crisp.
Yeah.
Michael, what about you? How have you sort of changed how you plan and sort of structure your day now that we're all remote?
The days are long. You know, there's no break in between. Before it was a couple hour airplane ride, you know, hang out with Baca for a few minutes after a call over at Caesars, and now it's just back to back. And so you have to block out time on your calendar. If you need 30 minutes between, just block it out so no one takes it from you. You know, as you could probably see from my background, I deal with gaming and hospitality. So I use Zoom to also sell. You know, so you know, for today I'm talking to Caesars, and guess what's behind me on my my background today, right? Is the a Caesars plaque. Here, I'll show you here real quick. That just automatically appears on the call. So I use behind me to also send subtle messages. Depending who I'm talking to, that'll get changed back there. Most people don't recognize it, but I'll change certain things. I had a manufacturer the day, he was looking up in the screen so far I could count the hairs in his nose because he spotted something on the back of my wall, because I looked at his LinkedIn and I saw he worked for a company. And I put a certain piece of little hardware up there from that company, and he spotted it, went right for it, and it broke the ice automatically. So I'm using the video is almost like that first call. You always look for that, you know, what's common? What can I get you to start talking? You know, start listening. And so, you know, all of us are starting to use that more in that, you know, on that sales side. With customers, we make it very simple. We kind of follow Victoria's thing, you know, we're on tight agenda, everything else. Let's get to the call and definitely give them time back out there. But, you know, we've had a lot of fun this year. We, you know, of course, you know, we're not traveling, we're not doing events. We went out and hired the Sheryl Crows of the year and everybody else out there to do these little events. And the craziest thing about it is that when Sheryl Crow showed up and looks like she just got up and grabbed the guitar, was the best thing we've ever seen. Because we got to see Sheryl in a natural state, you know, and truly her home and everything else. And so I kind of took from that too, let people see a little bit who I am, you know, just a little tidbit to keep them going, you know, but it's uncharted right now. It's uncharted times. We've never had to do this before, but this will be with us forever. The steps we're taking now, what we're learning, will be a hybrid version moving forward. This will never leave us. So might as well get used to it.
You know, I have to say too, how many people have dogs?
Oh,
I my dog likes to come back and hang out with me in the office. She likes to snore, actually, which I was like, I'm already tired. You don't need to sit back here and snore. But it has given us all a chance to spend some time with our our BFFs, I guess. So I love the filter thing, because now, you know, if she has a bark attack, which I'm sure happens with everybody trying to balance their dogs, their family, you know, that's going to be my new best friend, is
True.
the sound cancellation for sure. So
You know, dogs are so fun too. My daughter's dog, when it's over here, has its own little fan club. So if they hear Thor, they're like, bring Thor, and bring Thor up on the desk. And for some reason, he's interested in what's going on with the screen here. But again, you know, it breaks the ice. If you have a couple of employees on there kind of having a bad day, nothing cheers up the day better than a cute little doggy, right? So good call, Victoria.
well,
Go ahead, Victoria.
no, I was just going to say, this is random, but I think I'm going to throw it out there. If you've been on Zoom calls for 3 hours, it's okay to put yourself on mute and stop video for a second while you go take a quick break, a bio break, right? I feel like, you know, I want to be absolutely present on these calls, but there probably is a limit to how long anyone could sit in one place. So that was random. This is unscripted. Forgive.
No, I think that's
Yeah.
a
That's
super good call out.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be lying to you if I, you know, on a team call, I'm sitting here and then I need to run to the bank or something like that I haven't came in twice on the same Zoom call from my cell phone. And then I turn off the camera, then I'm on the AirPods in the car doing whatever, and I come back and no one realizes I'm gone. You know, so there is a way you can get used to, but it's like anything else, practice makes perfect. You know, you got to make a few mistakes before it works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is that polite to just not show yourself, like to block yourself out for a second? I don't know, Jen, I'll put that to you. I mean, is that appropriate? Because hey, Michael is like totally Zoom. He's the Zoom guy. I'm just using, it's my knowledge, just like everybody else on this call, is kind of more practical. Like in that I'm just learning as I go along.
Yeah, you know, I think it is. And what Michael is demonstrating right now is like, you know, you don't actually have to turn off camera, because when you do and you don't have a profile picture, I'm going to turn off my camera real quick, right? Like profile picture pops up and it's like super duper obvious that you just went off camera, and like sometimes it's not the nicest. So what Michael's demonstrating is you could have just a little cover for your camera, keep it on, and what happens is when you do that, the virtual background takes over and you get cut out of the video, but there's still this nice virtual background on there. So that's an easy way to like pause. But honestly, like if you're tired of video calls, don't be on video calls anymore. Like we've got Zoom chat, we've got Zoom phone, just make a phone call, right? There's nothing wrong with phone calls nowadays. And if you do need to end up going from a meeting, you know, you can go from a Zoom call to a meeting in like one click if you really need to see somebody. But don't be afraid to just say, hey, I'll call you, and take a walk while you're calling them. That's what I do all the time. And you know, once you start doing that and have the courage to do it, then other people will see that it's okay. And so to your question, Victoria, etiquette wise, nowadays, it's almost an imperative to go and do that in your day. And here at Zoom, you know, we're on our Zoom meetings all day long. And so all of our leadership encourages us to go out, take a walk, do something while you're on a Zoom call or even a Zoom video call. And you also have virtual backgrounds on mobile too. If you didn't know that, you have virtual backgrounds on your mobile phone. So you could be out sitting on a park bench and still look like you're here in your office. Just take your calls there. And suppress that background noise and you're golden.
Yeah. Hey, one little tip for everybody there. Make sure you're on the latest version. I noticed a couple of questions out there, especially with virtual backgrounds. Zoom is doing a great job of, you know, writing the code where it's working better. And I went through a period of time that even the high-powered laptop that was handed out to me seemed to have some problem. And it ended up being two things. It ended up being I had too many programs open, mean, I had, you know, of course your office is open, but I had everything else opened out there, a bunch of websites, and I'm thinking I'm going to go on there and have enough processing power. And then of course, as the versions got better, and now it's just picture perfect. And it's nothing's changed with the laptop. So if you see, as annoying as it is sometimes, you see the new Zoom plugin, the same one that happened yesterday morning, take a few seconds, update it, make sure you're updating Zoom, and you'll find out your experience and all the cool stuff's coming in there.
Mhm.
Hey, I had a problem before this meeting where my video was freezing and everything was terrible, and just wondering what the heck to do. Restarted my machine, and all of a sudden, Bob's your uncle. There it is. So I think there's just a lot that's constantly changing, and with everything that we have going on, that's always some good hygiene. I think there was one kind of question that I wanted to make sure that we got to, which is, you know, we're talking about, you know, going from meeting to meeting to meeting. And Felix, I think, asked a really, really good question of what happens, what are some best practices for when you're on two or three meetings at one time? And for many of us who wear many different hats, I know that's a big issue that we deal with. So any tips or tricks or tools that we could use from that perspective?
Yeah, this is, not well known, and we definitely don't like to talk about it much, but we have concurrent meetings that you can turn on for certain accounts and people who really need it. You can then be on 2 meetings at once. But for typical accounts, that's not, that's turned off and not encouraged. But, you can talk to your administrator and you can have concurrent meetings turned on for yourself. Although I wouldn't suggest it for your sanity, like just schedule one meeting and just like decline the others if you can, right? Like, of course, there's situations where you can't, but that's, our advice is if you really do need to turn on those concurrent meetings, and you can be, and then make sure to ask that person to record. And if you don't want to watch the recording, there are transcriptions. And then very soon, we're going to be coming out with a really cool feature that does summaries from recordings and transcriptions. So that hour-long meeting that you had with that hour-long recording and a lot of transcripts can be shortened to like 10 minutes. So we're working on that feature. So it'll be coming up. So those concurrent meetings, now you can just get the summary, Cliff Notes.
Oh, that's great news, Jen. So I can record like a 5-minute video of myself now, just put it in a loop, right? Take off and then come back and perfect, we're done. I got I just picked up my whole day back.
You know what? That actually, someone has done that as a hack, is just record themselves in a slightly moving in a loop, made it a virtual background, because you can do short videos as a virtual background, and then just did this with their camera, and boom, they were.
We're off to the store.
Wasn't that a South Park episode?
Probably.
I'm pretty sure Cartman did that for his virtual school one time. But it's a brilliant hack for sure. And productivity or unproductivity tools, either way, it's good to have the flexibility.
Yeah.
Hey, a couple things on home networking best practices. You're in control of your bandwidth, but everybody in the neighborhood has access to your bandwidth. So if you live in a neighborhood that has a bunch of children that come home, well, they're at home from school now, and they're all jumping up on all the video games out there, you're taking from that same shared resource out there. But things you can do internally, and I know a few people make fun of this, but if you have DirecTV, Cox, or whatever, and you can record a show or rewind a show, you have a DVR. And that DVR burns up a ton of bandwidth, especially if you're recording daytime shows, or it's recording shows from the night before or whatever. The best practice there is turn it off, because even when your TV's sitting idle in the living room, it's still recording so you can back up. And that's a lot of bandwidth it's taking out there. And especially if you have a split system, if you're using, for instance, DirecTV and Cox Internet, that sort of thing. I've had situations where the bandwidth went down. I went out there and unplugged it. And I said, I'll just deal with it. I'll deal with it later, and it fixed the problem. Because it always happens if you're talking to your president of the company. That's when it happens. Also, anybody in the house. Again, if you have children, they come home from school, they start gaming, be aware of that. If you have access to somebody that understands the router and the technical side, it's not that hard. They can actually go out there and give you priority. So if anybody's ever around the house, you know how to do it yourself, give your, what they call the MAC address, you know, for your system, your camera, you give it priority. That means you're taking priority over everything. But there's these little things, you can also Google that stuff and it'll come up with all types of little self-help. But remember, it's not Zoom on your internet, it's you. And you know, that will get you every single time if you're not aware of what's going on around you.
That's a great recommendation, Michael. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I think we want to take a couple of tips from what we learned today and give everybody back a few minutes. We also want to post this recording so that we can revisit it later, so the team can follow back and try some of this for themselves. And we will also post a transcript or a summary that we do. The feature isn't available yet, but we will provide that as a resource for the group that joined us today, as well as everybody in the company. So I want to thank Michael, Victoria, Jen, and Ellie for joining us. I'm looking at some of the busiest people I know, so I know this was a big commitment. Thank you very much. We anticipate doing this in the future, so we will have subsequent sessions. This is kind of the wrap for Unscripted, the first episode. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for everyone taking the time out to join us.
Thanks, Baca.
Thank you.